advantage I found. Couldn't find a better fit for them, along with my crown. And since the baton was passed, I've been down. Cause failing's not an option, and dad is not a noun, not at all.
My message to any dad, man, first off, know that, yeah, it is a hard job, but it's the greatest job in the world. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I wouldn't change anything about it. Everything you're doing from here on out, if it didn't have purpose before, now it has purpose. It's the most important thing you'll ever do. Just be a dad.
Welcome to another episode of Dad Is Not a Now. My name is Ishmael, changing the narrative for men of color fatherhood, as well as changing the narrative on the things I care about. And today, I'm truly honored to have this special guest with me. He has a project coming soon in October, entitled To Pachuco, and he's here with me now because I think it's important, especially in the current environment we live in, as we have this current administration whitewashing the history of brown
everybody.
people, of everybody. Thank you. And I'm truly honored to have him on. Henry Barajas, thank you for coming on the show, brother.
Thank you for having me, Ishmael. I was, grateful that you reached out. I listened to one of your previous shows where you had somebody nearly deported who was a self-proclaimed American citizen. So like you said, the climate is very frustrating, and I'm lucky that we get to tell this story at a time where things could be much worse, but depends on where you're standing.
Definitely. And the question I ask all my guests in the beginning, because I'm all about mental health, and I think you're gonna know the question.
Yeah.
How's your heart at this moment?
Well, I thankfully have access to healthcare, so it's currently ticking. So I'm from Arizona, so I have seen, I've had like firsthand, account of seeing Border Patrol presence never this bad. So I'm lucky that I've lived in these types of environments. But what is keeping me, and it's just a very constant thing in my life, making comics and telling stories is what really helps me in this time of my life. So I feel very lucky that I get to tell the story, To Pachuco, and to work with people that I admire and respect and look up to. So I'm in a good place right now.
And I look at you as like at my previous guest that I had on, who also is a writer. The importance of as a storyteller when it comes to history, I feel like that's a lot of responsibility when it comes to that. So just talk about that responsibility as a storyteller, as you tell stories and you implement historical background to those stories.
I feel, again, lucky to be able to use the medium to help inform people. I didn't go to college. I didn't get a degree, so I feel like making comics is how I get my degree. I get to go to the library, East LA library. I got to pull their boxes and files and hold newspapers and books and photos and see all these things that happened in 1942, the Sleepy Lagoon Murder Trial, that set into motion what is the backdrop of To Pachuco. There was a party in East LA in a neighborhood called the Sleepy Lagoon. This kid got killed. The city used this as an example to round up hundreds of Mexican men and women, boys and girls, profile them as killers, and then they boiled it down to a group of kids that didn't do it, were eventually acquitted, and had lasting ramifications in the neighborhood. And now here we are 80 years later, talking about it. That trial, along with the Japanese internment camps that were happening because of the World War II and the attack on Pearl Harbor, causing hundreds of thousands of Japanese Americans, being forced into internment camps. And so it was a bad time in the 1940s, and which led to a 5-day riot with sailors and Mexican men that were appropriating Black culture, Black fashion, the Zoot Suit that was made famous by jazz musicians at the time. I'm a huge jazz fan, love jazz. Got to help start the Tucson Jazz Festival. And to mold these things like history and fashion and clothing and music, especially jazz music, which I feel like a lot of jazz, musicians at that time don't get enough credit for. Basically parodying what Ken Burns said. Just like there's just so many and so many musicians at that time that was even then looked down upon. And it's just fun to like use that as a way to like accelerate and to enhance the environment that is To Pachuco. But the responsibility part of it is something that you can't really drag yourself down with. You can't really think about it that way. You have to always think about telling a good story. And with the guys and the insurance of it being fictional, being able to cherry pick and cafeteria the elements that you want to use that enhance the story you're trying to tell, which is a story about Ricky Tellez, who's a private investigator, an orphan, someone who's hired by a mother because her daughter was is going to trial and talking about the death of the man that was murdered at the Sleepy Lagoon. Him not having a mother, him not having a family, seeing that this family could be torn apart, is what keeps him in the case. And the times, just like so, it's been like an incredible experience all around.
But how has it been like personally for you? Because I know it has to be draining because you're going back, you're getting this information, and going through the history, and looking how the historical. If you look at overall the historical factor of how American look at Mexicans
Right.
in this United States, it's like a love-hate relationship, right?
Of
They love
course.
them when they need them, and then they don't love them when they don't need them, and they use them as a justification that because there's no jobs, so they're the reason.
Right. And at that time in 1942, uh, FDR partnered with the Mexican president to establish the Braceros program, which is farm workers program to bring Mexican men to the farms to tend to help feed people, and eventually in a future administration, they launched Operation Wetback, which is something I wrote about in the Dolores Huerta comic that's currently available for free for anyone to check out through the Civics for All New York Public Education Department of Education. So yeah, it and I think it like all people of color and all ethnicities have this same shared experience where white people love laughing at black comedians,
Mm-hmm.
but the idea of the black comedian marrying their white daughter is their worst nightmare. And with Mexicans is we love eating avocados, chips and dip, and Mexican food, but the idea of a Mexican being a politician or being marrying my white daughter, it terrifies them. And I guess in what is more comforting for me, and I'm a bit of I would say like a mental masochist where I love reading about these horrible things and I love finding a way to integrate them in my art. And the fun part is the research for me. What is the most taxing is the production of the comic, because I don't know if I'll send you the PDF, you'll get to read it, but it's like a Wu-Tang Clan concert in the credits of like just so many people that have to help make this thing I want to do possible.
And I think that has so much value because again, um, the way that this generation receive history, it has to be something that has to be entertainment. And
Yeah,
so, how do you balance that act of being a historian? Because again, like I told my previous guest, is that you guys are historians in this common generation. Because the way people could still consume history, they're not into it. They're not into actually looking at a video that's an hour long,
right.
or even looking at a big ass book to get history. They want to
Yeah,
be in the train. Like I think of shows like
like Watchmen, the Tulsa
Watchmen, things
Massacre.
like that get people engaged. Like, oh, that's fucked up. Let me learn more about it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's important to have those big books and have those hour-long videos and those more comprehensive means of absorbing that information, because without that, I couldn't do this. Without that, we couldn't have the Watchmen episode. So I think there is some level of that I guess constitution and tolerance, and the idea of like not everything has to be digestible in the form of the X-Men. Not everything has to be digestible in the form of something that makes me feel good. Like I hope someday, and I hope I think what's going to happen is we're going to lose access to the internet. We're going to I mean, more powerful, rich, wealthy people are only going to have access to these types of things. And we're going to have to return to more tactile artifacts like books and, tape and DVD and more, physical media, because this kind of thing is going to be less attainable. So I hope in the future we find a way to have future generations and our current generation become more comfortable with something that is not as 30-second, 50-second, video. I feel like that's what I hope, and that's one of the things that To Pachuco is. It lives in comic book shops, which is something that not a lot of people have access to. Not a lot of people have any interest in going to. Hopefully, you're in an area like I am in Los Angeles, where a lot of it's community oriented, and there's so many different facets of the building that are more enticing than just one sole functioning thing. So, and something that I've built my whole reputation on is having my work live in classrooms and libraries and bookstores, and having a little bit more of a reach outside of the traditional direct market that I operate in.
No, and then also what I find sometimes frustration wise is that, being, brown and black is that you have to justify your humanity. And that's the one thing as a storyteller, as yourself, as I know that has to be frustrating to you, is that you have to justify your humanity. Like give you an example, like you're never gonna hear, ever a person say denounce the KKK.
Yeah.
You're never gonna hear that.
No.
But when it comes to brown people, it's like, are you gonna denounce the Black Panthers or any other groups that's about revolution and change
Right.
and all about the aspect of true freedom for people?
Right. And that's something that we talk about in the book. I'm writing it, I'm lettering it, I'm co-designing and producing it. And Rachel Merrill was a New Yorker artist who we work on Gil Thorpe together, which was picked up by some news outlets about our 4th of July strip, talking about the exclusionary practices of leaving trans kids out of sports and banning books and kids having lunch debt. You're never and the antagonist of the book is Hanson Branham, and he's a sailor that comes from a long lineage of U.S. military service people. So he his dad was in the military, his great great grandfather was in the military, and he finds comfort in the Ku Klux Klan, which is there was an actual chapter in Pasadena, and which played into the race baiting war that was happening between Mexican Americans and Mexican people. So, yeah, you're never going to ask a Wall Street, executive to denounce the KKK, but you're going to ask, a trailer park white person. It really boils down to class in so many different in respects. You're never going to ask, you're never going to ask Jordan Peele to denounce the KKK, but you'll ask Ta-Nehisi Coates, or I mean to denounce Black Lives Matter, because we don't see him in those spaces, but we see Ta-Nehisi Coates in those spaces. So it's a really frustrating thing, and I think one of the benefits I have of operating in history is I get to learn about it, and I get to wield it in the art. So it's a gift and a curse, because like you said, it opens your eyes and it's hard to not see it, and then you try to dress it up in a comic book.
Yeah, and I think one of the frustrating thing is going back to the story of Garcia is that his story has been unsolved. Like
Yeah,
in the initial thing, it was never trying to solve the case. It was just all about dehumanizing Mexicans in
yeah,
America. You rally all the Mexicans, women and male, which if you think about it, like in this current environment, again, when you dehumanize a group of ethnic people, you justify the act.
yeah.
And so, like, what are your thoughts about that as you writing this story of the dehumanization of a group of people when you think of the idea of a mother losing a child, a family losing a child? Because again, like what I read is like he enlisted into the military,
Yes.
and then was it 2 weeks later he goes to a party, and then he's found dead.
Yeah. Jose Diaz is the actual person. In
Yes.
the comic, we change his name.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's one of those things where we're also going to print propaganda that was printed by the group that was trying to help exonerate the group, and it does a really good job of explaining the environment, what they're dealing with. Um, the tagline of the comic is "Now's not a good time to be a Mexican,"
Mm.
and that's the first thing the antagonist says in the book. And I wanted that to be something that you can read at any point in history, and that can be true. But there is something beautiful about it in the book where we talk about in the comic. Every time I list a location, whether it be downtown Los Angeles, Beverly Hills, I list the original Spanish area that it was called by the Spanish conquerors that had it before the America did, and before, and then right after the Native Americans did, and also listing some of the native areas as well. It's just a like new conqueror, like right now America is on this land. Can we say that 100 years from now? Like, will this be formally California? It's just like any point of history, and in any point of the people and civilizations, they have a finite time, and to explore that is really interesting to me.
No, I definitely feel you on that point because if you want to look back to history, I will ask people who watch this interview is go back to Reconstruction and how when you had Reconstruction, you had a campaign about black people because now they have this freedom that they're gonna take the jobs from you.
Yeah,
Uh, they're gonna rape your women and things like that. So, it's history repeating itself over and over again. So I think it's important that people understand that what you do has so much value because it gets you into that past of understanding the history of this country. Because before the United States was the United States, this was a country of brown and black people.
Yeah.
And when at the end of the day, whatever they try to do, when they're gone, it's gonna be black and brown people in the Americas. You know,
Yeah.
you're not gonna change the trajectory of what's gonna eventually happen.
Right. It's just a matter of how we get to, like you said, we get to record it and recognize it and see it. I mean, and as you said before, they took Jackie Robinson off the
Mhm.
website, who is a decorated veteran, who is an important figure in history. And you have all these people and these events, and you have it's just like the one of the things that works against this fascist regime is that the people watching right now aren't as stupid as they think they are, and most of them can smell the bullshit,
Mhm.
and and even when they try not to, it's hard to ignore it. And I hope with that Pachuco, you get to see a version, like at the end of the day, and why I have Rachel drawing it, because she's amazing with fashion. She's treating this as a noir. Why have David Lapham, and why have so many, like we got Ben Passmore doing a cover, Tula Lote. We have so many people that just make comics, and it's not about the comic they're making, because a lot of what I do is about the subject matter of what I'm doing. People look at me and go, "Oh yeah, that's the guy who does the Mexican history stuff." So I wanted to surround myself with people that just do noir, that just do comics, and to treat this as a comic. And at the end of the day, it is a noir. This is like exactly like how you would see Chinatown or any of these other movies. Harlem Nights, you would like see these things and go, that is about crime, that's about revenge, and that is what that is about. But it's a little different because normally the black and brown people are the help or the piano player or the driver. This one takes front and center, and it does make a little twist that the antagonist is a racist KKK white man.
And before, because again, I could talk to you for like forever because I think this is a conversation that can go on for like 5, 6 hours.
Yeah,
Like
for
this can
sure.
go into like different parts, but I would do this a disservice if I don't talk about your great grandfather.
Right.
You know, like talk about your great grandfather and how he inspired you because he was a badass.
Yeah, Ramon Jauregui was a World War II veteran and a Chicano activist who helped one of the last Native American tribes gain federal recognition. And I was lucky enough, with the help of Jay Gonzo and Claire Napier and Bernardo Bryce, to make a 3-issue comic that we self-published, and had it published through Top Cow and Image Comics. We're actually in the talks of republishing it because it's currently out of print. So that's some great news that will be coming out soon. But yeah, no, it if it weren't for the late great Congressman John Lewis in March, by Andrew Aiden and Nate Powell, I wouldn't have had the gumption to turn my great grandfather's story into a comic book. So I call that book my college kid. It took $30,000 in 5 years. And it flew the coop, and it doesn't call back, and it like was something that I thought about and nurtured for years, and now it has a life of its own. And I feel very lucky that so many people have responded to it, and probably wrote the first line of my obituary really early. And I hope that unfortunately he never got to see it, but he got to live it, and if it weren't for that, I wouldn't have been able to do it. And if it weren't for that story, I wouldn't be able to tell every story I get to tell now. So thank you for bringing it up, because it's something I'm so proud of, and I'm glad that people will still care enough to ask about it.
And as a storyteller, like I said, you have that great responsibility of telling that story about the past. Because I like again, like when I was talking to another comic writer, is that a lot of the people that lived that history is no longer with us no more.
Yeah.
So what happens is that documentation is not written down. There's no oracle. There's no prints of that history. And so what you're doing have so much responsibility as like our historians that they talk about this is what happened. I have these evidence of this conversation. This and so when your story has so much importance because this is the last living and breathing documents of those people that's no longer with us.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting things, particularly about someone like you and myself, is that black and brown documentation is usually oral, told between people, and not written down and not cataloged in a way that a white historian or history figure would have the deeds and the newspapers and the all these types of things. So I was lucky to have written at a time where he was still alive, and I was able to get oral information and to have the trusted community of going into houses and having coffee with people and getting stories and accounts that that made it to the book. And it's one of those things that you never planned for. Like you want to, like when I was a kid, I wanted to make Batman comics. I got to make one. I should have aimed higher in life, but this is what really speaks to me. So I feel very lucky that I get to have a chance to operate in this space and to have the trust of readers and comic book enthusiasts to be like, hey, he has something to say, and this is going to look and sound and feel like unlike anything that I could ever get my hands on.
And I just want to let you know, as a storyteller, again, you are. I, when I think about it, you are the historian. Because if you put everything in a nutshell, you don't hear a lot of historians coming out right now talking. Right? They don't know how to utilize social media to tell that narrative. So the work that you're doing is important because, again, you are that storyteller because you do a great job in implementing history. So
Mm-hmm.
you do a good job of doing that, and so you are that. You are that. How can I think of that word? You are that last line when it comes
Sure,
to
sure.
oral
That like a vessel.
story.
Yeah,
You're that last vessel because when you're gone, and if you don't, that history is gone.
yeah. No, it's. I feel very lucky that I get to do this, and I feel very lucky that you saw value in it. So thank you for having me on the show.
No, thank you for coming on and taking the time to talk to me. When
This
does
won't be
the
the
press?
last time we
Oh
do
no,
this.
definitely you're gonna come back on because I think it's important that we have an important conversation about the Mexican contribution to this Americas. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah, thank
again,
you.
we really don't have that conversation where you have this current administration talk about, hey, we need to talk about the positive of slavery. There's no positive about slavery. It's like it
Yeah,
was, it was messed up. Um, it was the startup money of this country, and but again, when you talk about the Mexican story, is that it is a part of the American story
oh yeah,
because when you talk about it, is that black and brown people were here before before I'm going to say it, the colonizers came here.
yeah, yeah. I
Plain and
mean, that
simple.
is there is a complicated history on all that I look forward to having this conversation again.
And I think we need to have that conversation. We need to have that open conversation because a lot of those undocumented workers that's been deported, like when you're talking about Operation Wetback, right?
Yeah.
How many of those were children of those families that were deported that were American citizens?
Yeah, no, I mean that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing kids with cancer get deported, and it's just it's a mess, and it's really horrible. And
Right. And I don't think America's really open to have that real conversation about that. Because if we have that conversation, it's going to open Pandora's box where that box is going to open and it's going to be almost impossible to close that box.
well, it will not be possible for sure.
Right?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Brother, I appreciate you for
Thank
coming on.
you. It
How can
means a
people
lot.
find you? And then also, when does the book come out?
The first issue of Death to Pachuco comes out October 8th. I will be at New York Comic Con with Rachel Merrill. We're also going to be at Thought Bubble in the UK. And I'll be doing a lot of events from August 8th till December. And then we'll have the trade paperback in March. So it's gonna be a long road.
Definitely. And is there any kind of conversation you're having right now, if you don't want to talk about that, this is going to get into the schools? Because I think this book
Well, I
needs
mean,
to
this
get
is my
into
first rated R story, so I don't think so. But I'm sure it will be in college classrooms for sure.
but yeah, this needs to be a part of that conversation about the history of Mexican relationship with America when you
Yeah,
talk about the Zoot Suit Riot, because again, that goes back to the dehumanization. When you dehumanize an ethnic group, you justify the act.
yeah,
And this has been the the playbook when you go back to the Native Americans, as well as if you in current murdering times, when this administration talk about the criminals, they're talking about black and brown people.
yeah,
Facts.
for
But
sure.
brother, I appreciate you for coming on. How can people
Thank you.
find you?
They can find me on Blue Sky and Instagram. That's the best places. Facebook, I'm there as well. But yeah, and here on your podcast. So thank you.
Definitely. The links will be in the description below. Like and subscribe, and we're out. Peace.